Hey there, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I'm so excited to introduce to you our guest, Lauren Joyce. So I'm going to read her bio real quick, and then we're going to jump into a conversation. So Lauren Joyce is the founder of The Magnetic Woman, a global empowerment and lifestyle brand. She is on a mission to help women reclaim their power through pleasure and remember that you are, in fact, the embodiment of the goddess. Welcome, my friend, my sister.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for saying yes. I'm really excited.
God, my pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation, and it is always a pleasure to talk to you. We always have really awesome, stimulating conversations. So now we get to have them publicly. We've known each other for quite a long time, and I definitely consider you to be a dear friend and a sister. So this is awesome. So you have so generously shared your medicine with my membership, which is called the Ancestral Healing Collective. And in 2023, or actually, no, it was this year, I think in March of 2024, you led an incredible experience called Healing the Witch Wound Through Pleasure. So we will talk about that in a bit, but I think I want to start with, what is your ancestry?
So Western European, actual percentage-wise, I'm more German ancestry than anything else. When people ask, I say I'm Italian and Irish because I look Italian and my last name's Irish. So Southern Italian, Irish, German, and Northern French is where all of my ancestors are from, like as far back as I know. So Western European.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, so how did you get to this place? So you are a feminine power and leadership mentor. So how did you get to this place where you are leading an offering like this, healing the witch wound through pleasure? I would love for you to share your story with everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm currently living. And I grew up attending Catholic school. I went through 10 years of Catholic school. And, you know, as far back as really anybody knows on all sides of my family, it's like all Catholic all the time. My parents were not very religious. And when you go to Catholic school all day, every day for 10 years, you soak up a lot of religious conditioning, a lot of internalized patriarchy and misogyny. And I left Catholic school after the 10th grade. I graduated from a public high school. And in my early 20s, like in college, I was like, okay, I don't really believe in anything. And then when I was 25, my dad passed away. And I had no idea how to handle the grief or the loss. And that's when I found Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts. So Mama Gina, or Regina Thomas Howard, the woman who wrote the book Pussy, a Reclamation. Now, at the time when I joined School of Womanly Arts 2013, she had not written the book Pussy yet. So I signed up with all of my religious conditioning. I had never looked at any of it, and signed up for this course because it talked about helping women live a pleasurable life. I assumed that that meant I would get to completely and utterly emotionally bypass my grief and skip right to like having a permission slip to eat chocolate cake every day. When I got there for the first day of the class, within 20 minutes, Regina says, a woman's power is her connection to her pussy. Now, 10 years of Catholic school, that conditioning rose up. I was like, get me out of here. What am I doing here? This is like not okay. But something deep inside of me, pussy, obviously, was like, this is exactly where you need to be. And subsequently, through working with Regina, I started to learn about the feminine. Like, that concept was not something I ever had heard of growing up, like at all, in any context. So here I was hearing about things like the feminine and goddesses, pussy, sensuality, sexual energy. And it was like this treasure chest had just been opened. It was like I'd been walking through a desert and I finally was taking a drink of water. It came up against all of my religious conditioning and yet felt so true and so right. So I've spent the last decade, a little bit more than a decade of my life focused on learning about, living, embodying everything that's encapsulated in the feminine. And a lot of what we see out there in terms of content around the feminine, I say really is coming from this patriarchal polarity content. And what they're talking about is the domesticated feminine, the soft, the sweet, the pick me, choose me. How can I be appeasing to men and daddy patriarchy to be chosen? And again, over the last decade, what I began to learn about the feminine was the wild, the primal, the sensual, the raw, the righteous rage, all of these things that in a lot of ways are still demonized and are still ostracized. And what I've seen again and again over the last decade is women who are really into personal development, spiritual development, who've been doing a lot of work on themselves, inevitably they get to a point where they could tell you what their childhood wounding is. What's that story that Susie on the playground said, and that's why now I'm afraid to put myself out online. You know, like we already know that. But what I believe most women leaders are being called to look at right now is these deeper wounds of the feminine, aka the witch wounds, right? The things that got us persecuted and killed in the past, we're now being invited into transcending those things so that we can step so fully into our feminine power and leadership. And the best way to do that is through pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's so much. And I love how it so easily rolls off your tongue, because I really feel like you do embody this divine feminine energy, this empowered feminine energy.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about your ancestral healing journey so far?
I would say my ancestral healing has been really centered around religious deconditioning. And whether or not people realize it, like, or whether or not you were raised religious, I would say the majority of people and the majority of people listening to this podcast have religious conditioning that they have to deconstruct. Because when you look at what the Catholic and Christian church was / is, 2,000 years ago, a little less than 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire, well, let me back up. The Roman Empire was very much a patriarchal society, right? Power was concentrated at the very few men at the top. Wealth was concentrated at the very few men of the top. At the top, it was very much this hierarchical system where women and slaves were at the very bottom, right? And around the 300s, a lot of traction was being gained from this new spiritual movement that was based off of the teachings of Jesus. And those teachings were saying that everybody was equal. So the majority of people that were being drawn to this new spiritual movement were women and slaves, which they also made up the majority of the population, right? So those men at the top were like, this is a little terrifying. We can't have them believing that we're equal. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to make this new spiritual movement the religion of the empire, but we're going to control what that religion looks like. We're going to control what the doctrine is. So you have the Council of Nicaea, where a bunch of men got together and picked out what books go into the Bible, obviously excluding books that did not support their patriarchal and hierarchical system of power. And so I always say that my Roman Empire is the fact that the Roman Empire never collapsed. It just morphed into a church, right? So then when you go through over the last 2,000 years, the church, the Catholic Church, and then the Christian Church is a key political figure in most countries' development and how most countries were ruling, and then the colonization of countries. So whether or not you were raised religious, attending church or learning about the Bible, there's so much religious conditioning kind of baked into this patriarchal white supremacy system of power that is dismantling. So for me, my ancestral healing has been and is so much about the religious and spiritual healing, like healing from religious trauma and reclaiming my own sacred feminine spirituality. So what I see as sacred feminine spirituality is a connection to the divine that is either feminine or non-gendered, that it is truly about unconditional love. It's a path of reclamation. So reclaiming all of the parts of us that we're told weren't enough or weren't lovable, not pure, not good. To me, it's earth-based, it's ritual-based. To me, the path of the sacred feminine is a path that you can't fuck up. There is no, oh, I did this right, and then therefore I'm going to be rewarded, or I did this wrong, and therefore I'm not going to get what I want. And so, of course, the more I was leaning into and learning about sacred feminine spirituality, leaning into rituals, leaning into working with Mary Magdalene and Lilith and all of these energies and archetypes that were heretical, the more I had to confront that deep feminine wound, which wound of, is this going to make me crazy? Am I going to be seen as crazy? That's one of the deepest wounds of the feminine, that like if I'm in my full power, if I'm in my full expression, if I'm owning my spiritual and psychic gifts, I'm going to be seen as crazy.
Wow. So just drilling down to put a finer point on everything you've shared, what would you say are the patterns that you are actively shifting and breaking on your ancestral healing journey? You already said so much, but like if you could just name them, this is what I'm dissolving and reshaping in my life and my lineages.
Well, what I've been saying recently is I'm dissolving the decentering of men. So right now I'm 37, single, no kids, and have zero interest in changing that. The deconstruction of religious programming and conditioning, and the dismantling of patriarchy and misogyny.
Thank God for you. We need you.
Thank
we need
you.
you so badly. I have such a deep appreciation for the energy you're bringing into the world. I think this is so needed. Definitely humanity is going through a huge shift in consciousness right now, moving from the 3D to the 5D. And so much of that really, I think, could be summed up in like a rebalancing of masculine and feminine energies, or to use more inclusive language, yin and yang, or the energy that asserts, the energy of structure, balance with the energy of receiving and attracting. And I know you could talk so much more about this. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I just love it so much. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some astrology, because my membership is called the Ancestral Healing Collective. And for those of you who don't know, it is a sacred space for female-bodied cycle breakers to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, and embodied joy with the help of pleasure and astrology as transformative medicine. So, like I said before, Lauren has generously shared her medicine with that workshop, which is now in our resource library. If you are interested in accessing this workshop and, have the ability to watch it over and over again, I highly recommend it, because it's a huge download of really paradigm shifting information. Go to heatherrebeccawilson.com and you can learn about all the membership perks. We do a new moon ritual, pleasure practice, and dance party every month. And then we have a guest expert. And so in March, Lauren was our guest expert. So in terms of astrology, do you mind sharing your sun, moon, and rising sign with our viewers?
I don't mind at all. So I am a Taurus sun, and I always forget my moon. My moon is Gemini and my rising is Virgo.
Okay, so that's Earth, So Taurus sun, Gemini moon, and what's your rising again?
Virgo.
Virgo rising. So Virgo is mutable earth. It is the most intellectual of all of the earth signs. And that's so interesting that you have a Gemini moon. And I can see why you're doing this work in terms of helping women to embody their divine feminine and just like be more in their body, because the moon represents our emotions and our ancestral wounds. Well, basically what we're responsible for giving to ourselves in order to feel balanced and at home in our own energy. And a Gemini moon can really get caught up in their head, right? Just spinning around in circles. And so I feel like what is so good for that, I know, like what is so good for the Gemini moons out there, or just people with Gemini energy in general. Hello, Gemini rising. We have to get out of our heads. We have to ground. We have to get into our bodies. Otherwise, we can like spin out into oblivion and drive ourselves crazy. So, what would you share for folks who struggle with that, with being in their heads? And I think we're conditioned to be in our heads, right? Our society values that. It values intellect over intuition, right? Receiving information in nonlinear ways, receiving information through the body. So what would you have to share about that for people?
Well, some of my favorite ways to get out of my head and into my body are really simple things like going for a walk and not listening to anything. Not talking on the phone, not listening to a podcast. I also love going for walks and listening to podcasts or, audiobooks. But if the point is to get out of your head, to stop spinning, right? Just going outside and walking. Dance breaks. Turn on your favorite song and just dance like a fucking maniac and tell me that you're still spinning in your head. You're not going to be. And then for a more focused approach, breath work is by far one of my favorite tools. If I'm like really in my head or I'm trying to like figure something out, I'll move into a ritual that always includes breath work. So either it'll just be breath work and then just sitting in stillness to see what's alive, or breath work with some kind of self-pleasuring jade egg and then usually some stillness.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really helpful for folks.
Definitely.
The other thing I want to mention in terms of your unique astrological signature, your unique energetic signature, is this Virgo rising piece, because your rising sign is the vehicle for your soul mission, your divine mission in this lifetime, and at least in life path astrology, which is what I was trained in, even though I'm influenced by different schools of astrology. Your rising sign is your perception of reality as well. It's the lens that you see everything out of. And so what is so cool about you being a Virgo rising is that virgin archetype, but it is not the woman who abstains from sex. That is not the virgin we're talking about. The virgin here is she who is a sovereign being, who is complete unto herself and doesn't look outside of herself for affirmation or for wisdom or validation. She looks within. And I think that's so cool, because I really think you are doing that. You are the living example of that. What would you have to say about embodying this virgin archetype who is complete unto herself without a man?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been, I think, a huge piece of my journey over the last 6 years, especially. So about a year ago from when we're recording this, I left a 6-year relationship. And prior to being in that relationship and through that relationship, I always, there was always a sense of sovereignty within myself, right? And it got to a point in the relationship where the only way it could continue was if I completely abandoned myself. If I completely abandoned my full expression, my desires for my life, my needs, my emotions. And I spent a while in that relationship, not totally self-abandoning, but trying to see can I still make it work? Can I kind of move these pieces around to make it work? And obviously, I chose myself fully. And it was a very painful decision because ending a relationship is hard no matter what. And I would say definitely the last year of my life has been really focused on where are all of the places, all of those little dark corners of my life and my mind that I'm still thinking I need to be chosen by a man. I need to get that through having a partner, that will make me more palatable, right? Like, where are all of the places? And so it's so perfect, right? That this is what I do and what I teach, that this is my rising sign. And it's really been a lot of the life lessons I've been learning over the last year is, not in the broad strokes way, because I feel like in the broad strokes way, I was already quite sovereign, but it's like, where are all those nooks and crannies that it's still there? And because it's still there, I'm not fully sovereign unto myself yet. And I think also at the end of the day, like, we're always works in progress. We're always healing. We're always growing. We're always evolving. And I'm sure as I grow, as I get older, I'll find more ways that conditioning shows up, more corners and crevices that gnarly idea that, I am only complete with a partner, or I can only have what I want through a partner, or whatever it is, will show up. Yeah. So did that answer your question?
Yes, that was
Okay, good.
amazing. Thank you for sharing so vulnerably about that.
Oh, of course.
I think it's so powerful because I think there's so many women who need to hear this.
Yeah. And I think,
Yeah.
one thing that's really been coming up for me a lot lately, and again, as we're filming this, is I'm 37, single, and I have no kids. And I would say the last year has been really kind of like a cocoon and a cave of healing, of resting, of recalibrating my nervous system. And when I think back to when I was younger, teens, early 20s, I just assumed that at 37, my life would look a certain way. I'd be married. I'd probably have one kid, maybe two. I don't know. I definitely would have purchased a house, like all of those societal markers, right? And now, not only do I have literally none of those things, but I feel like my life is just beginning. And I think back to me at like 8, 10, 16 even, like if she could have seen a woman like me, how would her life have been different? Because I grew up, again, attending Catholic school, which means the majority of the women who I was surrounded with growing up were married and had kids, right? Moms at school, teachers in a Catholic school, obviously they're very pro having families. All of my aunts married with kids, like, that's just what you do. And now I get to write the story of my life however I want it. And I am in no rush to add any other characters to this storyline right now.
This is awesome. So powerful. I'll just like keep saying that word over and over again.
Thank you.
But share with us what have been the hardest parts of this ancestral healing journey for you? What have been the biggest challenges for you?
Well, I think especially when I started focusing a lot more of my work and content around sexuality, it offended a lot of family members, and I got a lot of hate from them. So that was hard. And that is, continually challenging to receive hate and vitriol from people, whether they be family or strangers on the internet, for the work that I do in empowering women. Honestly, I think one of the hardest things, and it's something that I still probably struggle with to a degree, is owning the depth of my priestess and my spiritual gift. Because it's the constant fear of, oh, is this going to be crazy? Is this too weird? Is this too out there? Is this too much? Is this going to be the thing that everybody looks at me and goes, Lauren's lost her marbles?
You know what? We've all lost our marbles.
Right. I mean, is it that we lost our marbles or that the world has lost its marbles for thousands of years and we're just now actually getting our shit together? Right?
And
Yeah.
where everything has been so out of whack, so out of balance. So anything that is outside of the patriarchal norms and the misogynistic norms that we have been conditioned with, that have been presented to us as models for how to be normal in life, right?
Yep.
How to be an acceptable part of
Yep.
society. Anything outside of that is going to look crazy, is going to be
Yeah.
triggering for people. It's going to be activating for people. And, it's taken a lot of courage for me to, come out of the spiritual closet and share
Totally.
that I use feminine embodiment practices,
Yep.
when I'm working with clients. I mean, I absolutely think an ancestral healing journey has to address all levels of your being, mental, emotional,
Yes.
spiritual, and physical, right? And that includes healing your relationship with your pelvic landscape. So yeah, it's taken a lot of courage for you to share what you've been sharing. And I'm just so proud of you. This is so needed. Thank God for Lauren.
Thank you.
What you're sharing, what you're embodying, your energetic transmission is super important.
Thank you.
And it is going to piss some people off, and
This is a lot of people off.
What is what it is. It's like, okay, you're going to be pissed. I see that you're pissed, and I don't need to take your pissiness away from you, but I'm good. I'm going to keep doing me. I'm going to keep living my life, and you can be pissed over there, and good luck with that. Right. But that's a whole journey of detaching. Right. And I think that's the big invitation, perhaps, for all of us now who are doing this work, or people who are attracted to this work, is how can I detach even more from things that are outside of my control? Right.
Well, it's detaching, and I had to look at how much of my identity, spoiler alert, a lot, did I build upon being likable?
Yeah.
How much of my identity have I built upon, spoiler alert, a lot, being relatable?
Right.
And when we are women doing and saying and living the things in the ways that have been, again, cause for persecution and death for women, we have to, detach and look at, where did we create identities as a safety mechanism that is adhering to that, right? So getting hate online brushes up against that fear of, oh God, I'm not going to be liked by everybody. Because growing up, I was so likable, right? I'm really smart. I did really well in school. I was a great student. I'm funny, right? Being likable kept me safe. Being relatable, even in starting a business, it's like being relatable keeps you safe from a lot of haters, right? But then you get to a point where it's like, I want to move out of the surviving the bad to good, the victim to victor story. And I want to move into just straight thriving. That's going to come with a lot of people throwing projection and jealousy and criticism onto you. Can you be okay with being seen as not relatable? Are you okay with being seen as not likable for your opinions, for your viewpoint?
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is so potent because, right, it's not just about detaching from things that we don't have control over, other people's opinions, other people's projections, and at the same time taking deep responsibility, deep self-responsibility for how we've played into this ourselves, right? And it's both things. Right?
Yeah.
Taking responsibility for our own actions and, what we put out into the world, for whatever reason, right? To feel safe in the world, to feel like we're acceptable and whatnot. And what you're speaking to, I think, is actually very relatable. I think
I agree.
Right?
But,
Who are for women who are on this
fear.
path of like awakening.
Yeah. And I think it's also about doing the inner work where you're cultivating a sense of safety inside of yourself, because at least for me, in the idea of not being liked, I deemed that as being unsafe. If I'm not liked, I'm going to be cast out. I'm not going to be safe. How can I, yes, detach from whatever they're going to think and believe about me? And how can I soothe the part of me that's terrified that if I'm not likable, I will no longer be safe in this world? And if I'm not likable, that's inviting bad things. How can I soothe that part of me? And then looking at where in my life am I still trying to be likable over my full expression? Where am I trying to be relatable over the fullness of my desires? And I think especially because we as women have been so conditioned to connect and relate to other women through negativity, through how hard our life is, through how we're struggling, right? And that's also deeply influenced by religion. The more you suffer, the more you struggle, the more worthy you are, the more you're seen as pious or whatever it is. And so the idea of just straight thriving all of the time, especially now, knowing that how I live my life now is going to make certain women, well, certain people, but certain women really unhappy, because what it does is it shows them that they've always had a choice to live how they've wanted, right? So again, like, where in me am I terrified about being like unrelatable and not liked? And how can I make sure that part of me feels safe?
And I also think this speaks to your Taurus sun sign too, because Taurus is fixed earth. Earth is the body, it's the physical realm, right? What we use to build the structures that give us safety, stability, and security. And I do think that part of that growth journey for Taurus is learning to cultivate that sense of inner safety, right? I am safe no matter what.
Yeah, definitely.
And then for those of you who are unfamiliar, with the sun sign in Western astrology, and at least in life path astrology, it's where you shine from a 3D perspective, but it's how we see ourselves. It's our egoic self, but it's also the special sauce that you mix into everything that you do that makes you stand out from the other 11 archetypal energies that are these signs. Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Venus is the goddess of love, money, and pleasure, right? So this is where you shine. You shine in this sensuality, in your feminine embodiment, and your Venusian ways. I love that. But yes, cultivating this sense of inner safety, I think, is on the agenda for women right now. And for the future, right?
Definitely.
Thank you for all that you shared. I think it's really good for everybody to hear this perspective. Well, so let's go back to your workshop that is in the resource library of the Ancestral Healing Collective, and it is called Healing the Witch Wound Through Pleasure. And so in this class, you focus on the 7 wounds of the feminine and how to transcend them and open yourself up for more impact, abundance, and pleasure. So for somebody who's like, yes, this speaks to me, I'm going to sign up for the collective and I'm going to watch this workshop, what would you say to them in terms of how they can best prepare to get the most out of that experience?
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, first of all, I would say run, don't walk to signing up for the collective. Like, I'm not sure why you're even waiting till this point in the podcast to decide that. Secondly, I would say come in with an open mind and an open heart, because we all have internalized patriarchy and misogyny. We all are carrying these deep witch wounds. And when we begin to come face to face with them, it can be really confronting. I say often, so many women talk about wanting to live from their feminine, but they don't actually trust their feminine, because we've been told our feminine is not something that leads. We've been taught not to trust it in every sense. So when you go through the workshop and you start to hear and notice in yourself more of these witch wounds, more of these wounds of the feminine, have a lot of compassion for yourself, because you're truly just doing what you were taught, and you were taught this to try and keep you safe in the patriarchy and in this patriarchal culture. come in with really an open mind and an open heart to really see where is this playing out in your life. On a practical note, obviously bring a journal because taking notes always helps solidify the content and the information. And also know that this gets to be just a jumping off point. Like, the workshop's amazing. You can watch it as many times as you want, and it's not the end all be all, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's meant to be an introduction to what all of this is. Just be patient with yourself and give yourself the time, the resources, and support to work through whatever comes up for you after or during.
It's so amazing. I highly recommend
Thank
it.
you.
I mean,
I do too.
all of the workshops are incredible, but you know, I know you really well, and I know the
Yeah.
journey that you've been on, and
Thank you.
the experience is extremely potent, and it's
Thank
medicine
you.
we all need right now. So I want to check in with you about what you're working on now, because you recorded this workshop in March of 2024 of
Yes.
this year.
Well,
So what's
yeah.
new? What's happening? What are you excited about?
Yeah. I'm excited about so many things. And obviously, the witch wounds, helping women transcend these deeper wounds of the feminine, is my body of work. So that's still very much alive in what I'm currently doing. So I also have a membership. It's called the Red Temple, where we gather for monthly rituals. There's a pleasure practice calendar. Heather's going to be coming in and doing an astrological forecast for us soon. So that's something I'm really excited about. And recently, I actually just put out a course bundle, essentially, called Led by the Feminine. And it's free enrollment for courses that are going to be coming out over the next year. So one of which is my Sexy Rich Bitch, my Wealth Temple. So it's all about how these witch wounds relate to our money as women, because I mean, we've all read Think and Grow Rich. I don't know about you, but I'm so over old white Christian men giving me advice. And I'm just like, look, like, you could probably write your childhood scarcity story again a million times, and you're still bumping up against shit when it comes to your money, and more specifically, the impact and full expression in your life. My opinion, my belief is that it's because of these deeper feminine wounds. Also included in that is going to be a relationship course called Relationship Revolution, because as we move from 3D to 5D, and as we go through this consciousness raising, what I'm seeing is a massive shift in relationships and partnerships. And I forget what the statistic is. I think it's by 2030 or 2040, like almost half of women at the age of 40 will be single and childless. I can't remember the exact specifics, but it's becoming more and more popular, or, you know, the choice of women, because we have the financial freedom and security to choose that. And women who are choosing to be in partnerships, they want actually an equal partnership, not a partnership where they are taking care of their partner emotionally, mentally, where they're doing all the domestic labor. And we say we want these things, and then we get into a relationship and we continue to act out that patriarchal conditioning within ourselves. So we have to transform that. So that's also one of the courses in there. And there's two others, but I could go on and on. But basically, what I'm focused on, as I said, is helping women descend through men, deconstruct religion, dismantle internalized patriarchy, and internalized misogyny. So that's where we're at right now. And just looking way forward, 2025, there's going to be a lot more in-person events and retreats coming from me as well.
I love it. And you're going to send me the links to everything so that I can put the links in the description of this video. And I also just want to put in there that you love men. I love men, right? Could you speak about the plight of men right now? And I know that I did not put that on my list of questions, but I feel like people listening to this and people watching this are going to be like, you know, does she hate men, or do they hate men?
I don't.
Like,
I hate the
talk to
patriarchy.
us. Right.
Men and women have patriarchal conditioning, and it shows up differently in the genders, right? Or it shows up differently in how we're raised and socialized as men or women, or however you identify. And so men have a lot of patriarchal conditions as well. And men are amazing. I love men who love women.
They suffer under patriarchy too. I think that's what
And
people don't realize.
patriarchy as well.
Yeah.
So much, especially when it comes to their emotional landscape, their like whether or not they form deep friendships, right? There's a lot of ways that they suffer and have wounds from the patriarchy. It's also my opinion that right now men are really being called to the carpet to do that healing work, and only they can do that healing work on themselves.
Right. It's not our responsibility.
It's not our responsibility at all. That idea, again, it comes from patriarchal polarity, that the feminine is here to heal the masculine. No. We are not emotionally responsible for men. And I love men. And a man who has, done his inner work, who loves the feminine and loves women, is such a incredible being to have in your life. And I think what's happening right now, what we're seeing is men and the masculine are really being called to the carpet to do the work that women have been doing for 50 years.
Thank you for clarifying all of that. I could just
of course.
hear in my mind and see in my mind, people having questions about like everybody hates men now. And that's not true.
I don't hate
like
men.
You're saying, they're being called to the carpet right now.
I think they're being called to the carpet. I don't hate men, but I do think that we underestimate that the majority or a large portion of men hate women.
So sad. It's so tragic.
It's so sad. And that's why I said I love men who love women. And I just find it so ironic and such a double standard that the standard is misogyny. Like, it's completely fine that men hate women. And if a woman starts calling men out for their bad behavior, it's, oh, what, you hate men now? No, I don't hate men, but I sure as shit don't like men who hate me.
And the other sad part about it is that, each of us, no matter the organs you have, we are all our own unique balance of masculine and feminine energies.
Definitely.
So when you are hating women or hating the feminine, you're actually hating yourself. You're hating a part of yourself. So I think that's like a really big example of how patriarchy is bad for men too. So thank you.
It's horrible.
Thank
for
you
men.
for clarifying that.
It's horrible for men. The dismantling of patriarchy would benefit everybody. And I don't hate men. I love men who love women.
Right. Thank you. And any system that forces you to use violence in order to maintain that system is an abusive system. Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, everybody's suffering.
Everybody's suffering. And I think with social media and where we are as a society, where more and more women are sovereign in every sense of the word, we're really seeing this underbelly of men's behavior. And again, I don't hate men, and I think it's completely fine to say, and I don't like men who don't like women. They need to do their own work on that. You know what I mean? I think that sometimes this idea of, if we're teaching this stuff, we have to be always so loving and so compassionate. You can see that you are also hurt in this system, and that is on you to fix it.
Right. And also, there are some women who are complicit in maintaining the patriarchy, right?
So there's a huge amount of women who are
a lot of women are guilty of that.
Unfortunately, it's mainly white women, because they choose their proximity to power, right, over their own interests of being a woman, or they think that if they're, chosen by daddy patriarchy, that they'll be safe.
Daddy patriarchy. Oh my God.
That's my new thing. I just did an Instagram thing about it today.
I love that.
Patriarchy, please choose me.
Well,
but yeah, I think I just think that we can love men and we can call out bad, misogynistic, and abusive behavior and hold them accountable and responsible.
Amen. Amen. Okay, so you and I could talk about this forever and ever.
Yeah, right. Next podcast episode.
I know. We'll have to do another interview, but you know that this is called the Cycle Starters podcast. So could you share with us what cycles you are starting in your lineages?
Well, one, I think like a new perspective / way of aging as a woman, because my mantra is every day I get hotter, richer, and happier.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, so that's definitely the first thing. Cycle that I'm starting is a return to the sacred feminine spirituality, to that witchy, priestessy connection to the earth and to the goddess. And I would say another cycle that I'm starting is prioritizing fun and motherfucking pleasure.
Amen. I love it. Thank you. Well, so Lauren, where should people go if they want to find out more about you and your work, and if they want to get in contact with you?
So I am The Magnetic Woman everywhere online. Instagram's a great place to follow me. I've been putting more time and energy into my TikTok, which I believe my TikTok, The Magnetic Woman Coach, maybe. And yeah, Instagram and TikTok would be the best social media platforms to find me on. You can go to my website, you can join my list, you can find me, let me know that you heard me on Heather's podcast. If you have any questions, let me know. Reach out. I love meeting everybody. But yeah, so themagneticwoman.com or The Magnetic Woman on Instagram.
Well, thank you so much. This has been
a
very stimulating conversation as always. I love talking to you and I love you, and I just hope you keep shining bright.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing. And
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for being here, and we will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. All right, take care, everybody.